Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Celine Namdar, Cisco's Industry Solutions Executive and Global Smart Water Lead. I also serve as America's Partnership Chair for Smart Water Networks Forum, also known as SWAN. I'm very excited to be moderating a wonderful panel of experts today on the important topic of water cybersecurity. Before we get started, we encourage you to ask questions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we will respond them as they come through. So on to our wonderful panel. First of all, we have Kristen Sanders. She is the CISO of Albuquerque Water Authority. Very excited to have her. Roger Caslow, Hampton Roads Sanitation District CISO. Thanks for being here. Also, we have Adi Karasik, who is Global Technology Leader for Operational Technology and Cybersecurity with Jacobs. And Rocky Smith, who's our Water Architectural Lead at Cisco. Welcome, everyone. So cybersecurity is top of mind for water utilities, and as they become more and more digitized, it becomes more and more important. And also we're seeing a big trend of IT and operational environments converging, which really puts a lot more emphasis on why there needs to be a very strong cybersecurity approach for water utilities to secure their systems. So in this session, we will discuss the critical task of securing water utilities and highlight some best practices and hear about what our experts have to share. So to kick off this session, we will start with a question on what are the key water security challenges that you see. So maybe we'll start with Adi and then we'll go around the horn.
Hey, thanks, Celine. I think it's a valid question for today. And, you know, in our regular work, we deal with a lot of water utilities, and typical question is, hey, what button do you push to make us all safe? Which it's not really how this works. And if we were to categorize some of the challenges that pretty much every water utility in a country deals with, they're kind of summarized on this slide. First thing is to establish their IoT and OT asset discovery. So how do we protect something that we don't know what that something is? So in order to protect what is important, we need to know what is there on the network, what needs to be protected. And through the years and years of usage and operations, what we have learned is a lot of organizations have been adding more and more assets on their network, but we kind of lost count on everything that's out there, and it's also not generationally standardized. So we will have on a network equipment that is brand new, and we'll have equipment and devices that are years and years old past their end of life point. So asset discovery is a crucial thing. Next thing is the risk and vulnerability management, which is important in terms of how do we measure the exposure of a water utility to potential cybersecurity threats. The next thing is, once we have established on what do we protect and how risky that is, how do we ensure that we can 24/7 monitor everything that's happening in the network? That results with operational efficiencies in terms of security, resilience for the water utility. And finally, the global goal would be to go towards the IT and OT convergence in terms of security monitoring and establishing proper governance. One of the biggest issues that we have with water utilities is lack of quality governance in terms of operating standards, procedures, and policies that should be in place on the operational side of things.
Thank you, Adi. Would love to hear from Roger and Kristen on kind of the utilities perspective on what the key challenges are, maybe emphasizing things that Adi mentioned or anything in addition.
Okay, so I know one of the challenges that we had was that we didn't really have an idea of what was normal traffic It was rather new for IT to start working with the operations side, so this was all kind of new to us. So we actually were able to partner with Cisco and set up cyber vision so that we could actually have visibility into what was connecting to the network, what was it talking to, what were normal protocols that should be seen on the network, and just building those baselines. And then from there, we were able to develop the alerting to let us know if there was actually an anomaly that had occurred. Because obviously, if you don't know what normal is, you're not going to know when something does happen.
Absolutely. Roger, your thoughts on challenges?
Yeah, so everything Adi mentioned is spot on. And I say this many times, the scare factor, and Kristen articulated that she didn't know what was normal over on the OT side. My advantage in coming to where I am at HRSD is I've come from living and breathing ICS world SCADA side security, from working at General Electric and Suez and other industrial control space. So my area of knowledge was there, and it wasn't a natural thing, but it occurred over time. But understanding what that baseline is, understanding what's supposed to happen on the network, what's supposed to happen with the PLC access, the DCS environment, the SCADA environment overall, having that monitored in place, having that come to a single dashboard, the connection points, the log aggregators, into a SEM that goes to a SOC floor for monitoring, and all these other things. It's normal for the IT world, right? We go, okay, yeah, that's easy. We connect. I said this earlier that as far as challenges goes, everything Adi said is 100% correct. And the other challenge we face is I don't want to say fear factor, but it really is close to it for the cybersecurity professionals. If you go to RSA conference, or if you go to Black Hat DEF CON or any number of these conferences, 95% of the attendees, of the security professionals with certifications in the field, have never touched ICS, the OT space. A lot of it is fear. A lot of it's, the whole FUD concept, but translated to the other side, right? And that need for us to move there. So another challenge is finding people who can get over that fear and adopt and address the industrial control space, whether it be from power into water, into oil and gas, or whatever the major spaces here for critical infrastructure, because we are critical infrastructure and we do have to protect it. So that's the other I would add to that, but able to connect those together. And that's what I'm doing here at HRSD, connecting those pieces, parts together, getting those lines out from the industrial controls and SCADA side, connecting those through a DMZ to properly keep the environment separated, but treating them as OIT and BIT, separate but equal, and making sure we protect, but also have visibility into those networks. And again, we have Cisco devices and Cisco throughout our environment to help us get that visibility, along with a number of other partners and devices in the security space that may be a little bit abnormal to the old school think of SCADA, right, which is the fear factor. And I say old school because back in the day, that mentality still exists of, well, back then we didn't do this. Back then we didn't monitor this. Well, that back then was back then. This is now. And we have more issues than are reported on threats to the water industry and the wastewater industry and what's going through and what's happening today. So we have to address that up front and address that not knowledge gap, but that fear factor gap of embracing the security professionals who are really good at network security, really good at data security, really good at all these other solutions, and bring them into the fold in the industrial control space.
Maybe, Selene, if you don't mind, I would add one more thing that kind of connects to what Roger just said, and that is there is trend in the ICS world that security, digital resilience, and security is achieved through obscurity, and that's not necessarily a secure way of dealing with these things. In terms of relationships, Jacobs and Cisco have worked on a couple of interesting projects in creating the designs for potentially water plants of the future, because the connectivity is we're so dependent on connectivity today that it's impossible to exist and operate contemporary systems without some sort of access to internet. The second thing that happens here is it's going to take some time to change the mentality of how do we approach dealing with these type of problems, and what Roger's calling the fear factor, or I would call it maybe a technological generational gap. Yes, obscurity and segregation is good, but it's not the ultimate solution. The second point is typically in discussion with water utilities, the very common comment that I would hear in the last couple of years would be, well, if something bad happens, we can always operate this facility manually. And then COVID happened. And now with COVID, do you have the staff to operate your facility manually? And will you have the required staff available to do what it is? So we are, whether we like it or not, very technology and connectability dependent.
Great thoughts. Thank you. Thank you both. Rocky, what are your thoughts as far as kind of the big challenges that you see from Cisco perspective helping utilities such as Albuquerque Water as well as Hampton Roads Sanitation District?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. It's an important question, and I'll just go back and maybe highlight a few things that we've talked about and expand a little bit. I see, one of the big issues, and we've heard it a bit thematically, is that taking maybe what we've done on the IT side and maybe applying it on the OT side with the operations, with their specific goals in mind as opposed to the IT goals, and it is a different world and it is a different set of care abouts, but that doesn't mean that the tools are not valid. So there's a challenge there, and Roger highlighted it really well when he was talking about these conferences, where there's not been a focus on ICS, and so when you start thinking about IT/OT integration, maybe even from a perspective standpoint, you don't necessarily have the same talent. So we see the introduction of new technologies to help solve these problems, but the problems are, and Adi highlighted them really well. Visibility is a huge one, right? We have to know what's there before we can really begin to properly secure it. The IT/OT integration, both from a cultural perspective as well as a technological perspective, is part of that. But it's a journey, right? And so I thought it was a really good discussion.
Thank you. So I'm going to come to you, Kristen, next. If you can tell us about how Albuquerque Water has played a key leadership role in this space and really securing your facilities for now and into the future, and we'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so luckily, our leadership has always taken security very seriously. They had already worked with some vendors to develop a basic security plan and to adopt the NIST cybersecurity framework before I even started with the organization. So they had already invested in some pretty great tools when I started, so that was good. I was able to then, build a program out from there. The big thing that we noticed was that on the enterprise side, we were doing pretty well on security. When it came to the operations side, of course, there was that, you had the IT team and you had the OT team, and they didn't really do much together. So it was one of those things of a lot of the security was very much based around, manual failover processes. If this happens, we've got boots on the ground that'll take care of this, and these are our fallbacks. But there really wasn't much thought about the cyber security aspect of OT. Luckily, the OT team has been great on working with us and helping us to better understand that environment. We're able to really work together. We did a whole SCADA modernization project. We had quite a bit of end of life and to support network equipment over there at the OT side. So of course the biggest fear is that if a switch dies, what are you supposed to do? And these switches were so old, we couldn't just go get a brand new Cisco switch, throw it in and expect it to be able to connect. So there was a lot of work that had to be done, even to the point of replacing fiber in the plants to be able to get all of this new equipment up and operational. But now, everything's covered under support. We have TAC for assistance if something happens. So we're not just kind of left out on our own. And of course, yes, we were able to leverage cyber vision now that we have the new equipment. Also, with the new Cisco firewalls, now you've got FTD code, you have the source fire that you can run. I mean, it really opens up the opportunities once you move to the new equipment that's actually supported.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you for that. Roger, as the first ever CISO at Hamptons Road Sanitation District, what has been your approach for ensuring cybersecurity for your facilities?
So yeah, we're a regional water wastewater utility here in Southeast Virginia, and we're a state entity within Virginia too. We're a political subdivision, so there's challenges to itself because we service and work with all the communities. A lot of the approach up front, no matter where I go, is establish relationships, talk to the regionals, et cetera, to make sure I get that community of interest security notification going on. So if something's happening in one of my local municipalities and they see something a little hinky, then I'm notified of that, and we start sharing that data as fast as we can. So establishing those things. But the first thing I had to do was go toward the non-sexy part of cybersecurity, which is GRC, right? No one really likes to do it, but it's kind of those things you got to have to do, right? Policy, 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 policy. And doing that and assessing our current infrastructure and building that relationship across so that as the first ever CISO and security leader here, let the OT side of the house, the ops side, know and prove to them that I had the SCADA, ICS, DCS, PLC chops coming into it, right? That I understood exactly when they're talking about that Allen Bradley PLC giving them problems. I ask about what model number it is, and they're looking at me like, he knows the difference. Oh my gosh. And the process dealing, the issues we'd have with, a General Electric PLC or any number of apparatuses within our environment, them know that, hey, listen, I understand how hard it can be and what we have to do. But that was the hardest part, to build that relationship up so they know that I'm not playing around when I talk about the environment. I understand their problems, I understand the concerns, and I'm here to help. And a lot of it is relationship. But the flip side on the technology stack, I didn't inherit a lot of technology in the security side. That's a good thing. It's a bad thing. The good thing is, as I've mentioned before to everyone here, at least, I'm a builder. I like to design and build. So give me the Lego kit. I'll figure out how to work it out. I'll draw my own plan up and identify the requirements. So I spent the first 6 months here on the job, requirements building at a very slow, methodical rate, relationships, requirements, and then and build from there. Now we're in the stage now where we're operationalizing, flipping the switches on things, optimizing some of my devices I need, dumping some of the devices I know don't need to be there anymore, try to get rid of and collapse solutions, dealing with all these daily things everybody's dealing with now with, Microsoft Exchange lately. It was SolarWinds before that. And oh, by the way, I have a SolarWinds instance that nobody told me about in my OT environment. Thanks for sharing that, Uptide. But that goes to Adi's previous comment, or his previous concern, and his issue with, we need to know what we have. So a lot of my time is also trying to figure out what we have that I can either refresh, update, throw out the door, or whatever. So that's really what we're talking about.
Maybe one thing that Roger just touched that I think is also a very, very important and extremely important to emphasize to everybody who might be listening to this is the relevancy of the governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC, to the cybersecurity practice. Right? Without the well-established standards, policies, procedures, it is very difficult to organize and standardize your operations. Without that, we cannot have the ability to institute a valid cybersecurity defense for the facility. We can't assess the risk. We can't, because everybody's solving the problem differently. I use the anecdotal approach in which somebody showed me at a water utility somewhere in the United States the process, how are they doing something, and of course they did not have the policies in place. And I asked them, why are they doing it this way? Oh, that's because Jimmy likes to do it in that sequence. But Jimmy retired in 1990 something, right? So for the next 25 years, we're following a process that is based on something that was relevant or important in 1990s and is not really up to the par for the times of today and for the technological demands of today and for cybersecurity requirements of today. So this is probably the most boring part of cybersecurity, but it's absolutely crucial to set up a proper cyber and digital resiliency.
You're right. Governance is king, and without governance and processes and procedures, etc. On our OT side, we have a really smart electrical and instrumentation team. They're really smart. I applaud them from what they do. And when it comes to the security automation aspect, one of them thought that they could simply drop in a router and just like you could, technically you can do with a PLC. You take one, or an HMI is a better example. You take an HMI, you take that HMI, and you just replace it. Plug, walk away, done, right? Okay, out of the box for the most part. But they thought they could do the same thing with a router. I'm going, it doesn't work that way. You got to do some other things behind that. So that education gap there for those people who have been doing this thing since, Jimmy was around, right? We got that too. Since the 1980s, we've been doing it this way, or 1990s, we've been doing it this way. Like, yeah, but now with more network gear inside your environment and more automation here, you can't really do it that way anymore. You have to, and then when they get awareness, they realize they can't touch it. They go white face and they go, oh, this is big. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of big. Will you help us? Yes, we will help you. Don't worry. We are one team, one fight, and not just one deep.
Great points. Excellent. So Adi and Rocky, it would be great to hear how Jacobs and Cisco have been collaborating in this space of water cybersecurity, and kind of what have been some of the efforts.
Sure. I'd like to address maybe a few things, and that's a very tough question because we have so many irons in a fire, and we're playing together in so many different fields in a water world. What makes Jacobs unique, I believe, in this space is, apart from being your typical systems integrator and your typical consultant that comes and offers their services for a fee, we operate a network of over 100 water utilities worldwide as an operator. So we do have the perspective of not just the integrator, but the operator and somebody who deals with the daily problems of running these water and wastewater plants. So from that aspect, we've been working with Cisco for the last couple of years. And I'd say probably the coolest thing that we have done is support of a water supply, cybersecurity support for the water supply systems for the Super Bowl in Miami last year. And as we were working on supporting that, because if you think even about from a risk perspective for the event like that, if you cut the electricity to the stadium, well, you might stop the game. But if you contaminate the water supply system to the stadium, the exposure, the significance, and the potential implications of on an event scale like that are absolutely horrendous. So we've teamed up and with a few other companies, and we supported this effort straight from the water utility that was supporting the stadium. And then from that point on, we've engaged in a couple of projects, and we teamed up. I would say the best to explain this is to designing the digital infrastructure or water utility of tomorrow. And the reason I'm bringing this up is we have several locations where we are integrating some of the cutting edge technology that Cisco has in some of our designs, and with existing clients or with water utilities across the world that are helping us demo and test skills some of these concepts and operational technology equipment, hoping that we can come up with a very solid design of a water and wastewater utility plant design of the future. This involves a whole line of technologies, and I don't want to waste everybody's time listing every single type of device and technology that we're utilizing, but I would say that we have several sites that we're cooperating with in United States, as well as in United Kingdom, and as well as in Asia Pacific area.
Yeah, and just to add on, Adi, and it's been a pleasure to sort of work with Jacobs for the reasons Adi laid out. We did the work on the Super Bowl, and we participated there. And then from that point, we actually put together a team between the two of us, and we did a joint white paper specifically on water cybersecurity, which we felt like was an important area we both needed to address. And then after that, Adi just was talking through some of the work we've done jointly on some of the architectural projects, if you will, looking at plan of the future. And I think one of the interesting things that came out of our work with Jacobs is Jacobs was in a unique position to sort of say, here is a good example of for example, a large industrial network where we want to take these certain requirements around developing future use cases like AR, like leveraging potential to look at things like Wi-Fi 6 and some of those other technologies. But also they were part of other architectures where we were still doing SCADA modernization, but we were looking at wide area networks, for example, which allowed us to take the technology that Cisco is bringing to the table and apply it to both of those scenarios. And really look for that plan of the future holistic architecture and really start to develop it. And so some really good solid work there with Jacobs and some high quality folks to work with.
Thank you. This is certainly a wonderful partnership that will result in great value for our water utility customers as well, and their customers. So we're super excited about this. So let's talk about industry best practices. So what are some of those best practices, and what are some key lessons learned for securing water utilities? Anyone can chime in.
I'll jump in first and just tack on to a few things we've talked about and really emphasize them. I think when we talk about industry best practices, it's really important, from a big picture principles perspective, to understand that cybersecurity is really an ongoing process. So it's not something where you're going to sort of roll it into a project and be done. It's something that has to be continually evaluated and looked at. And I really enjoy the fact that we can listen to Roger and Kristen speak to their roles, because they bring the perspective of it's more than just the network. I'm a network guy. I tend to think in network terms first, but I love hearing the policy perspective that Roger brought earlier, and the organizational perspective that Kristen brought, speaking about pulling the teams together and bridging the past into the future. those are important things. When we talk about industry best practices, I do think it's important, to think about, understanding what you have to moving toward, securing that with tools like, not to get too far in the weeds, but basic things like multi-factor authentication and things like segmentation, and things like industrial automation security specific tools like CyberVision. So those are all part of best practices, but simply just do an assessment, right? Let's start there. Like, find out what you've got, find out what is important to secure. Sometimes, even before you do that asset discovery, look at your business and say, what are the important things we need to secure, and have that in mind before maybe you take the next step as well. So those are some important tools, and I know the other folks have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, so to bounce on what Rocky said just there, and Kristen mentioned it earlier, the CSF is a great solution, because your point, Rocky, is it is a journey, right? Or Adi said it's a journey, and to your point, Rocky, it's about the maturity space. So whether it be the NIST CSF or any number of other models you want to work with, I like the CSF because it's a combination of CMMI and a lot of other control sets of 853, which can provide granularity and all those other wonderful things. The capabilities are easy. It matches up to ISO if you need that, or any number of other solutions. But the important part is you can measure your maturity. And if you know you need to only be a 2, then you're fine. But if you want to stretch goal yourself to a 3, you can do that, and you can measure your success, and you can have a greater, not just an audit thing, because auditors are great for what they do, I guess, but they're not really operational security and aren't really telling us how to better secure it just because we check the box. It's not a check the box exercise. It's about measuring your maturity of your network security, your endpoint security, your provisioning, your access control, all the other things around the entire NIST CSF that are touched on in that framework. And you can baseline yourself and work from there. It's a lot of work up front. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you it's easy. If it was easy, all right, anybody would be in the job. But it's not easy, but at the same time, it's not an insurmountable task with the right partners in your place, with the right implementation, integration partners to help you along the way, solution providers, etc. Again, we have Jacobs in-house. I got to full disclose. We have Cisco in-house. We're 100% Cisco shop. Got to full disclose. But the reality is that's really, you need to have the maturity model along the way and the right partners to help you get there and to get to where you need to be. But as a water authority or as a water district or as a water, whatever you own or operate, you have to know what you are, you have to know what you have to know what you have to secure, and incorporate the basic 4 principles of IT that apply to OT: asset management, patch management, configuration management, change management. And it's not the exact same solutioning, not at all. But the principles are identical in every way. And I have yet to have a single person challenge me otherwise and argue in an educated manner that I'm wrong. And that's really what it comes down to. We need to start somewhere, no matter where you are in the journey, no matter how big your utility is or small your utility is. You have to start somewhere, and you have to be willing to accept change along the way. If not, good old Rufus grabbing a hold of the wheel to shut things down should not be your only disaster recovery continuity of operations plan, because Rufus is eventually going to get tired. His arms are going to be a little tired too after a while because of all the things that are potentially going to hit us and are hitting us today.
So I completely agree with everything that's already been stated. One additional thing I want to add is just that security has always kind of been viewed as this, the department of no. and being more of a roadblock and inhibiting people. So really the big thing about being able to step up your game on your cybersecurity is having the buy-in from the organization. And to me, it's all about making it security as a service versus security as a roadblock. Because if people can't do their job, they will find a way to circumvent every control that you have put in place. So all of that work just goes out the window if you don't have the buy-in. So that's my biggest thing.
Especially operators, right? Because operators love to try to find a faster way to get to what they need to get done. Well, I'll just go download this patch at schwungshaku.com because it's faster than me getting over to. Don't do that. Don't do that at all, please. But yeah, the operators will find a way to get around it.
And Kristen, I love the fact that you use the word or the term security as a service. I've said for a long time that simplicity is a feature. And that goes for, when we are, we all have, customers. Our ultimate customer, are the folks, receiving the water. But even internally, we've got people we're serving there with, with trying to secure the network and secure the operations. And the simpler we can make it, that helps with buy-in a lot. I thought that was a great insight.
Yeah, maybe one more thing that applies to cybersecurity. We see in a lot of industrial sites, not just in water, but in everywhere else, that they usually have these pamphlets and signs and logos telling us that safety is responsibility of everyone. I'd say cybersecurity is a responsibility of everyone. It doesn't start and stop with the CISO. I mean, kudos to Roger and Kristen for the job they do, but they're not the police that can police everybody's behavior around the water utility 24/7. This is a responsibility of the whole organization. There is a way you can correlate cybersecurity risk against the risk management model, so you can correlate the cyber risk exposure to dollars or shutdown of service and stuff. And once you start doing that and you start extrapolating the impact and severity that the cybersecurity risk can have, everybody starts freaking out and trying to understand how do we avoid this. So I don't know, Rocky, would you like to maybe start with where do we go from here?
Yeah, sure. And I think I think we think about it in terms of a 4-step journey. And again, everybody's going to be in a different place in their journey, and everybody's going to be, looking at this from a slightly different perspective based on where they are. But really, we kind of see it broken into 4 stages, and then the first stage is asset discovery, and if you walk away from our discussion here with one thing that we probably hammered on more than anything else is understanding what you've got on the network. And so asset discovery is a key part of the journey. It's a perfect place to start. You want to know what your assets are, and not just what they are, but who they're talking to. What are these assets communicating with? What is their firmware revision? What is their model number? Like we heard earlier. But that sets you up to move into stage 2, which is network segmentation, and understanding what needs to communicate with what. Helps you understand how to segment your network so that you're isolating your zones and making sure that for example, your HMIs aren't going out and ordering pizza or doing something they shouldn't do, right? They shouldn't be talking maybe even horizontally. But you have to understand what they are, get that baseline. Kristen mentioned it earlier. Have a baseline for what you do, understand what normal looks like. And then you can move into segmentation, which is really where you start to put up those internal walls in your network, so that if there is a compromise somewhere, and as much as none of us want to think about a compromise, it's going to happen in many cases, and you want to build that segmentation in preparation for that, and then look at things like threat detection. So understanding, what are the threats that may be coming in? Look for abnormal behavior. We not only want to block behavior that is abnormal, but we want to be alerted if that behavior is detected, even if we block it. And those are important things to take into account, and important tools to have in place to make that work as well. And then, we want to move eventually toward an integrated IT and OT security operations center. So we want that holistic view. We want to understand the aggregation of events and tools, because very often the threat surfaces cross the IT/OT border, and very often we see the actual attacks themselves cross the IT/OT border. So we want to see that integrated IT/OT operations center as a goal. And one thing that I'll say here, when we look at these 4 stages and we look at this journey, again, everybody's on some point in this journey. You're not going to leap to the end. You're going to start somewhere at the beginning. You may already be well down this path. But it's important to think about this. And when we revisit this 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we'll probably be adding to this. We'll probably be maintaining as we go. It's something that we're going to continually visit. But right now, this is really what we see from a journey perspective.
Thank you. This is all really great information, and hopefully folks can take away great points from these. So maybe a final question about future of workforce. So, as water utilities go to digitize, and as we move closer and closer to Industry 4.0 and getting ready for kind of the next generation of workforce and solutions, what are some of the things that water utilities can do to really prepare for that? As younger generations come in, as older generations retire, what are some of the things that can be done to really help with setting up the next generation for success, and really bringing in solutions that can really help everyone move forward with the challenges that we have coming up? So maybe I'll go to Adi first, and then we'll go around the horn.
Sure. I think there are 2 or 3 different areas that future workforce needs to be addressed. One is, of course, education and training and all of that stuff, but it's not necessarily just at the water utility level. I've recently dealt with a water utility where we trained some of their staff to perform a function, and they were not able to keep that staff because they became much more expensive due to their newly acquired skills. So I think the key will be in connecting with your local community and ensure the steady flow of people that have appropriate training and education. We've been working with Cisco for a while to establish a training and education program that would transform these young operational technologists or IT technologists into the domain of supporting the utilities. And I hope we have the solution on how to do that sooner than later. But I think educating the new workforce is probably the biggest piece of the puzzle that we need to put in place.
Thank you, Adi. And Kristen, and then Roger, if you can chime in, that'd be great.
No, I definitely was thinking the exact same thing as far as training. That's the huge part of it, the training and education. And also just the collaboration and information sharing, trying to break down the silos, because unfortunately it tends to happen. And if we can just get rid of the siloing and have more of that information sharing, I think we would all benefit.
Yeah, I echo that to Kristen, and again, that's why I said coming in here, I had to build relationships across and share my bona fides, so to speak, to make sure they understood that I wasn't just some IT security guy walking in the door, right? But to Adi's point, I echo that 100%. I'd recommend every single utility have their CIO, their CISO, their chief of operations, all the major players in this space, right, actually work with, if they have to work with their talent management, HR department or whatever, or some outreach to local community colleges, training centers, whatever, to help build those skills. I'm already pushed the ops people who deal with these things to seek out SANS certifications, SANS level certifications in ICS. Why? Because it makes them smarter. It puts my security to the edge now. So my user is my greatest asset, sometimes my greatest disappointment when it comes to things, but they need to be the greatest asset on securing our perimeter and securing our operations and securing our core business functions. But reaching out to maintain that pipeline so that, again, Adi, you've been around long enough to see within the industry, the average operator in this space is in their 50s, 60s. It's an aging workforce in this space. So to grab the younglings, so to speak, right, the Padawan, and bring them in and and push them through, but then also have that pipeline continue to go through as the Jacobs and the Emersons of the world come in and steal our people after we train them and get them smart. But to get those people smart, brought up, certified where they need to be, if sometimes it's about just education here and know how to handle. But that is 100% spot on. But reach out to your local community college, training centers, whatever. Find people who are hungry. Find people who have the drive to learn something new. Build that in and continue it on. But that itself requires the nasty P word, process, because you have to have a process in place to build that and run it through. And you have to have buy-in at the levels that I just articulated across both information technology, operational technology, and understand that both of those things really don't need to be integrated. They just need to be looked at in an integrated picture of sorts because the skill sets are so similar, and be able to work across those barriers and not have fear to attack that other side and secure it in a way that doesn't have a negative impact to what you do every day, your core competency, cleaning water, cleaning water, cleaning water.
These are excellent points. And just to round out this question and this conversation, so Rocky and I both at Cisco, we are also working from that perspective. We have an education arm, Cisco Networking Academy, and we're looking into really, and we're collaborating with Jacobs on this as well, really looking into bringing programs where we can have this training option available for IT and OT professionals. So really looking forward to that, and we'll know more to share hopefully in the near future. So really exciting time and exciting space. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your time. Excellent viewpoints and experiences that you shared. I really appreciate that. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you may have. Have a great day, everyone.